Good morning, friends, and good morning to our dear listeners and viewers. If you are hearing me, this is Kayamba FM. I'm Ajang Dwanya Jack, coming live from the city of Perth. We regularly host the members of the FPD Institutes. It is a forums, a think tank made up of many South Sudanese professionals and people in the academia. These are the people who have established themselves in various disciplines and in different sectors of the economy in the diaspora and within African region as well. Our members are part of different government institutions in the West and even here in Australia, where I am, and as well as in Africa. We always bring to you different topic. We bring to you different trending events and political happening that have significance on the life of ordinary South Sudanese. We don't discuss politics, but we are educational programs where we think that our people and our country can benefit from our knowledge. So we bring to you what we believe could be of your interest and it could add value to you. So today we'll be looking at the topic of the economics. As you have seen, economic hardship have always produced economics revolutions. That is one thing we want to discuss. We believe that economic hardship have always led to economic revolutions. And before I dive into it, I want to mention to you that we'll be having our guest speaker and is member of the FPD Institute, Dr. Nyal Kunchol. Friends, kingdoms and monarchies have always been toppled by economic challenges. Whenever the country go broke, the supply of the basic commodities, the essential that people require for their day-to-day living expenses, the normal daily life is always interrupted whenever the economy has failed. We have seen in history that economic hardship had always produced revolutions. It is a long history, and it could be dated back to thousands of years before Christ. But let's look at the most recent events in the last few years, starting with the Arab revolutions. We know that the Arab revolution started in Tunisia. This is a country that has experienced hardship under a one-man rulership for many years. Young people were going to universities and graduating and they could not find jobs. They reduced to normal dehumanizing jobs in order to survive and to support themselves. Their life was reduced to rubbles. As years goes by, the Tunisian economy that has always depended on tourism primarily declined. So there was that fateful events of one university graduate who was pushing a cart. In East Africa, they call them mokokoteni. And he was pushing his cart. He was dehumanized, degraded by the police officers. And this young man could not think of anything else, but he lost hope. So he set himself alight in the street of the city in Tunisia, in the Tunis city. And that is how riot and demonstration erupted in Tunisia. And it went across the Arab world like a wave. It topples powerful dictatorships. It toppled powerful leaders. It went across to the Middle East. Kingdom were shaken. All the emir and sultanates were worried. What caused it? It was an economic hardship within the Arab Republic of Tunisia. When economy is poorly managed, when one family becomes a clique, the kleptocracy has always produced disasters. And whenever the public erupt, there is no rooms for gun to overcome them. But the catalyst is always an economics hardship. Why is it important? Because the world is going through difficult times. People would wonder, why should we be worried about what is happening in the world? With the globalization, what we call the chaos theory is more realistic than what people think of it. It was thought to be something buried in the academia. When we talk of what we call the chaos theory, it is stated that when a butterfly flaps its wings on the west coast of West Africa, it will cause an hurricane on the east coast of the United States of America. That is the chaos series. In other words, what appear to be minute and of no significance in one part of the world can cause a huge disruption. You have seen the war in Ukraine. The World Food Program cut its budget for the refugees and the internally displaced people in many parts of the world. South Sudan will not be spared. The budget has been cut for 1.7 million internally displaced South Sudanese in the Republic of South Sudan. It is critical that anybody who could think and meditate on these ideas should take time and think about them. Now, continuation with the topic of economics. Why we believe that it is a matter of urgency for the Republic of South Sudan and many sub-Saharan Africa and many economies in the Horn of Africa that are struggling to take heed, take this advice as a warning and take it seriously and manage their economies. We have just looked at the case of Tunisia. After it erupted, there was no room for the governing elites, people who were controlling the economy. They cannot hold back the masses. The street of Tunis were alight with fire. Rioting erupted. The police could not control it. The army became powerless. And that is how the government of Tunisia, the family that has ruled the country for close to 40 years, was toppled. It was the economic hardship that led to the failure and the collapse of the government of Tunisia. And it went across the Middle East and Arab world and became an economics revolution that no one could overcome. There was no room to overcome it because the wave was too strong for the ruling elites. The wave were too hard. The masses went to the street and there was no room for anyone to overcome what was happening in the street. The publics went on rioting, claiming back their rightful position to be part of the economy. Now, did that stop there? No. We are aware of our sisterly country in the north of South Sudan, the Republic of Sudan. Omar Hassan al-Bashir has overcome so many difficulties, but it was only a brief movement due to its economic difficulties that led to the failure of Omar Hassan al-Bashir. His government was toppled. His government was succumbed to demonstration in the street. Why? Because the military see no point in shooting the masses. It was an economic hardship that led to the failure of the Bashir government. Omar Hassan al-Bashir was toppled. And when that happened, the state and the country descend into an anarchy. It is critical that an economics, policies, and management, it has something to be paid attention to. It started as a demonstration of few loose boys and young girls in the street. And it grew and grew and grew. Then it occupied the street of Undurman, and then the street of the city, the central Khartoum. It occupied the parliament, the Freedom Square. Everywhere were occupied because the public and members of the public could not afford a daily bread. An economics hardship that led to the failure and the collapse of Bashir government. When the public cannot afford the necessities of daily life, the outcome has always been disastrous. And it has to be the interest of all the ruling elites to pay attention to what we are talking today and take it seriously. Because without proper economics management, the nation has no chance to realize its ambition. Because it is the public, a disciplined public, the law-abiding public, that can lead to a successful governance of a country. What are we saying? In simplicity, the central state cannot function if its economy is collapsing. Because we have seen unending increases in prices of the daily good due to inflationary pressures. And that's what we'll be discussing today. Now, we have just seen Sudan. The most recent case was the case of Sri Lanka. One family, the Gotabaya's brothers. This is one family that has ruled Sri Lanka for many years. The Gotabaya brothers, the family of Rajapaksa, the Rajapaksa family has ruled Sri Lanka. This country rulership has rotated between the two brothers. The Gotabaya and Rajapaksa, the most latest president. These people instituted policies, this family instituted policies that could not grow their economy. In 2009, they changed the policy on agricultural production, on the fertilizers. And their policy led to drop in agricultural produce. Food items diminished in the markets. As COVID-19 came in 2019, the economy was already vulnerable. The Rajapaksa brothers and the family and the ruling elite resort into borrowing. They borrow over $51 billion. Hold on, we have been joined. Hello? Okay, we were joined by Dr. Niall, and he will be with us shortly. So he will speak on these matters. Dr. Niall, if you are listening, you can call again. And I'm waiting for you. So the Rajapaksa brothers led the country into borrowing more money in order to sustain their rulings. By 2020, their economy starts showing systemic signs of collapse because the main sector of economy could not generate enough revenue for the country to service its debt. So they start defaulting. When they defaulted on the Chinese debt, which was about 3.5 billions, the line of credit where they borrowed the money to run the government was closed by the Chinese. This situation was exacerbated by the shortage of fuel as well. People could not afford fuel. And the supply and consistent supply of petroleum products in Sri Lanka is not only for the vehicles, but it's also the generation of electricity. The Sri Lankan government could not supply power and energy. Shops were closing. By June 2022, it all erupted into chaos in the street of Colombo. People went into demonstrations. Tires were being burned. Police came in. And the demand of the people was simple. The Rajapaksa government must go. That's what they demand. The Rajapaksa family had no choice but to add an insult to the republic. The president, Gotabaya, stepped down and his elder brother was installed. And that infuriated the public again. They went into demonstration once more, leading to instability of the Republic of Sri Lanka. What are we saying? It is simple. Whenever people are exposed into economic hardship, it is highly likely that a revolution will erupt. And if you placed people into the corner of anger and one corner with guns, guns cannot control them anymore. It is always easy for people to die in the street with bullet than dying of hunger. Now, why is it so critical and why is it important? When the economy is poorly managed, it takes time, but it eventually comes. Economics management requires a serious foundation and fundamental of the economics in order to stand. A short-term policies that are very myopic, that don't go far enough, do not remediate the situation of the people. That is what Sri Lanka did. And that is what Sudan tried to do under Bashir. When the bread movement erupted in the street of Khartoum, Sudan said, okay, we will be lifting subsidies on the oil. Sure, Dr. Niall will join us shortly. Yep. So, what happened? A short-term solution which the government tried to give as a solution would try to remediate the situation for a couple of months, but it will not last. It will not last. It will try to give you time. Therefore, whenever there is an issue, you can do two things. You can do the short-term, give the short-term solution, but with the view of instituting a long-term program to stabilize the economy. That is what failed in Sudan. When the bread prices went up and the common man cannot afford bread, they lifted they give subsidy, they reinstall subsidies to the oil, and they lifted taxes on the import of the breads and any raw products like flour that used to produce bread. For it to flow into the economy, it need to take time. It could not remediate the immediate need of the people. The prices keep going up and going up and going up. So what happened eventually? What happened? It was getting too late. The government was running out of options. As people go to the street, they pour into the street of Khartoum, and it keep building up. Because the economy worked like a cobwebs. When the prices of bread went up, it affects the supply chain, the whole value chain. So, other sectors of economy start feeling the impact, and the knock-on effects went on and on. Okay, folks, yeah, let me add Dr. Nials here. I will need to add him to the show, and you can. I'll need to add him to the show. Let me figure out with Dr. Nial how you would join. So, what happened eventually? It led into chaos and anarchy in the street of Khartoum. The military had to step in to restore law and order. And in that process, the opportunists took the opportunity, and President Bashir was put under house arrest. And that is how his leadership ended. How did that happen in Tunisia? Yes, and the public was calling out for the government to leave it game, to manage the economy properly. It was ignored. The ruling family did not see it as an issue in Tunisia, because no one could listen to the expert, and the alarm was sounded earlier enough. And people become miserable and miserable and miserable. There is a limit to everything, and it reached a point of hopelessness. And when that young man set himself up in the street of Tunis, that was the straw on the camel back. That was the last straw on the camel back. And they could not manage anymore. What happened then? It became chaos after chaos after chaos after chaos. And that is what happened in Tunisia and in Khartoum. Now, friends, why is it critical? We have a duty, all of us, to inform and educate ourselves and talk to our policymakers, because our country is at risk. Like many other countries who have gone through the same thing, it is within the same league like those countries that have failed economically. And when the economy fails, everything else goes down with it. It does not spare anything. It will lead to chaos and anarchy. Now, what can you do as an individual? They say information is power. But we believe information is only a potential power unless it is put into action. Information that is not put into action does not help anybody. They said it is power. Yes, we agree. Information is power. But it's just only a potential power as put by Napoleon Hill. It is only a potential power. You may have the information, but if you don't know what to do with it, it can sit with you. Now we know, everyone is aware, economic management is critical and important for the progress and the growth of the nation. But if anyone is not doing anything with that information, can it help anybody? Our team here is never here to blame. Our teams has always comes here to educate. So be patient, friends, because I have one of my colleagues, he's an economist by profession. He's coming. I think the app is giving him a bit of difficulty, but he will be here shortly. Dr. Nyal will be here with us shortly. And I think he will be of benefit to many of you listeners. He will join me shortly. I'm trying to arrange how we can get on, but we will continue with this topic. Please feel free to ask questions as well. Feel free to ask questions. Share the video because we want the information to reach as many people as we can. Because if information reach majority of the public, then it will have a multiplying effect and it may influence the decision makers. That is what we always hope for. So share the video, ask your question, and Dr. Nell will be here to address them. What I may do is maybe to call Dr. Niall and I will see how you can get in. So give me a minute. Let's call Dr. Niall to join. Okay? Because he will be of great benefit to many people. So I'm calling him now to see the best way at which he can join. So we are calling out Dr. Niall, bring him into the studio. Hello, Dr. Niall.
Hi, Jack.
There has been few difficulties getting you on, but the viewers can see your photos, your profile. We load it here. I don't know, will you be able to turn this video on and I see how I would cast it onto the screen?
It seems like you need to add me to the broadcast on your side.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I can see you came in, so I will add you. There you go. Yeah. Oh, beautiful. All right. Let me hang up, but your camera is not on.
Yeah, I'm having issues with my video camera right now. And
Okay.
for some reason, my phone is not, I cannot access the link through my phone. So for now, we'll keep it as an audio.
No problem. That's fine then. Its audio is good. It's good enough. Okay. So you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Okay. Now we have been talking about the economic hardship, but let me cast your. I will cast your. There you go. I will cast your image for people to see. For people to see. Let me arrange it differently. There you go. People can still see you and they can still see your profile. Now, Dr. Nyal have been talking, and I think you would have followed me for the last few minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've been saying is economic hardship has always led to economic revolutions. And I've given some example. Now, as an economist, the viewers maybe it will be of great interest to our viewers to listen and to hear from you because as an economist, this is your area. And I can talk to a certain extent, but it will be good if you can speak. So, Dr. Nyal, welcome. And to the dear listeners and viewers, this is Dr. Nyal Kunchol. He's an economist by training and by profession, and is practicing and working within the Canadian government. Is a member of the team that could be called treasury in many countries, or is the member of economic team that you'll be called the Department of Revenue. I don't know how they call them in South Sudan. Well, but it's part of the Ministry of Finance. If you was in South Sudan, so you being in charge of the economic policies, we have seen a runaway inflation. A sporadic rate went up here and there in the last few days. I think last week's in Juba. These are all the sign of economic hardship what our people are experiencing. Now, can you take us through how some of these countries come into this? But the reason we are educating, and it is up to the public to see if their economy resembling some other economies. We will not go here into detail, but we are just giving kind of generic. So come on, join and tell briefly about, tell us briefly who you are. Maybe some viewers may be their first time for them to hear you speaking. Before we had like 17 kind of people, but we are on different platforms. So welcome, Dr. Nial.
Exactly. All right. Thank you, Dr. Jack, for having me on the show today. As you've mentioned, my name is Nial Kuch, and I'm a practicing economist here in Canada. So I work for Canada Revenue Agency. That's basically where I work. And before I dive into the topic that we'll be talking about, I would like to put out a disclaimer out there that the views that I will express in today's show are entirely my own, and they do not in any way reflect the opinions or the views of my employer. That's the Canadian government. Now, getting into the topic of economics and political instability, it is a well-known fact that there is a very strong link between the economic situation of a country and
Yep.
and the political situation. And there are various channels through which the economic situation of a country could cause political instability.
Mm.
You've gone through situations or examples in different parts of the world where economic hardships have led to collapse of governments, and so what we are really trying to do in today's show is to brainstorm on what we can do to fix our economic situation so that we do not see a complete political anarchy in our country.
Yeah.
And it's a topic like the relationship between economic situation and political situation is really wide, and it's kind of hard to really pin down and talk about one thing, because there are several channels through which the economy can feed into the political side of things.
Mm.
And you've mentioned inflation. So inflation is a hot topic even in developed countries. for example, in Canada right now, inflation is a big factor. And there are a lot of things that have, resulted in higher inflation. For
Mm.
example, we have the COVID-19 pandemic, and then the problem in Ukraine, plus other domestic issues,
Yep.
you know. But if you're looking at the situation in South Sudan, basically since the onset of the civil war, inflation has been rising, and
Yep.
the government has been trying to control, the level of inflation, and in certain instances, we thought it was it was working, but we've seen that it hasn't worked out quite well. And someone sitting at home and viewing us today could ask, so what is inflation, and how does it feed into the political economy
Yep.
of the country?
Mm.
Well, let's start by defining what inflation really means, right? So it's basically a general increase in the price level in the country. So things that used to cost, let's say £1 in the past, they now cost maybe more than £1, right?
Mm.
So it's now more expensive to purchase, given basket of goods than it was previously.
Yep.
That's the that is the layman's definition of what inflation is. But
Mm.
then now we need to link it to the whole economy, or to the aggregate economy.
Yep.
And there's one main way through which inflation could cause political instability, and
Mm.
it is through the what it does to people's savings. So if you are a saver, or if you have assets in a given country, so they could be real estate, it could be financial assets,
Mm.
and the inflation goes up, the real value of those assets will will go down, right? So you have people that have been running businesses, or they could have been people that work in the government, like myself,
Yep.
and and then inflation comes in, and they lose value of all the assets and their savings,
Mm.
right? So that's one that's one way. And then the other problem is, of course, through the exchange rate, like we talked last time.
Yep.
The um,
The lifting of rates from 400 and something to 605. Hello, Dr. Nia. Okay. Friend Dr. Niala just dropped off, and let's give him time for him to come back soon. But Dr. Niala and I have been speaking on the topic of economics, and as you was explaining, why do you care? Because it goes into your pocket. Simple, right? Anything that goes into your pocket will affect you in one way or the other one. Therefore, it is critical we understand, and it is critical that we should support. Okay, welcome back, Dr. Nial.
sorry, my for some reason my connection was cut off.
Yeah.
Right. So I was talking about. I just finished talking about inflation as one channel through which the economic environment of a country can impact upon the political side. And I was just getting into the exchange rates and currency
Mm.
before I lost connection there. right? So if the economy of the country is not functioning optimally,
Mm-hmm.
the country is going to lose its ability to export goods, you know,
Yep.
or services as well. And if that happens, the currency is going to deteriorate because you know nobody is essentially demanding the currency for that country. So
Mm-hmm.
if you look at what happened in South Sudan, the political um, the political situation that we found ourselves in 2013,
Mm.
you know, kind of affected our uh, productive capacity.
Mm.
And as a result of that, we were not able to export, um, a broader set of goods. So what happened was, nobody was demanding South Sudanese pound outside our borders,
Yep.
and the pound lost value, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a story of a chicken and the egg, because it's kind of hard to pin down. Is it inflation that causes currency collapse, or is it currency collapse that causes inflation? So
Inflation.
you can come up with arguments for both sides of the story. So in economics, we say it's a correlation. So there's a relationship between inflation and currency deterioration, but you cannot say inflation causes the currency to collapse. Yes, it can,
Mm.
but then also currency collapse can cause inflation,
Inflation. But
right?
let me let me ask you this question.
Mhm.
Yes, you are right. It is a question of chicken versus the eggs, which come first. But if you look, let's narrow it down to our to the economy of South Sudan. And the reason we try to narrow it down there is our test case. Yeah, and we have seen in many other, but you don't have to base it on being someone educated and you read economic papers, and as I do, we can always apply it anywhere. Now, the question is, in South Sudan, we no one buy our pound. We don't export anything. The oils, no one buy the pound to buy our oils. We go and buy US currencies to sell our things. Now, or to buy other people's stuff, the greenbacks. Now, the only thing that drive the value of the pound here is the presence of the greenback, that currency. And therefore, the economic deteriorate. And I could be wrong here. I stand to be corrected. It look like the value of pound is shifting on daily, monthly, yearly, or whatever reporting period with the inflationary pressures. So in this particular case, we would say it is the inflation that pushing the value or leading to deterioration, diminishing value of the pound, is it? And correct me if I'm wrong, but is my observation correct?
It's not. I mean, it's a good observation. I would not say that it's because of inflation,
Mm-hmm.
or it's only inflation that is leading to the rapid decline in the value of South
Or
Sudanese
pound.
pound.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh, there are other things that are also not working well. If you look at the modern economies, you know,
Yep.
inflation and exchange rates are usually a function of the of financial system,
Yep.
and to some extent the strength of the monetary policy in
Yep.
that country. Now, the problem that we have in South Sudan is I don't think our monetary policy is working the way it should. You know, and when I talk about monetary policy, it's I'm referring to the systems that are in place, to control the money supply.
Mm-hmm.
And the way it's done in modern economies, for example, Australia or Canada, is you have the central bank,
Yep.
and one of the mandates of the central bank is to control inflation.
Yep.
So they have various tools that they can resort to control inflation. One of them is setting the interest rates, right?
Yes.
So if if inflation is high, that means there's a lot of money, flying around in the economy. So in modern economies, what you do to bring down that inflation is to basically increase the interest rate.
Yep. That's what we have been seeing in the
Exactly, and that's and
OECD.
that's and that's what's happening now in most countries. In Canada, we've had the Bank of Canada increased the interest rate a few weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and basically when the central bank increases the interest rate, that is going to feed to the financial institutions, and they will also increase their interest rate. So basically, when people borrow from the banks, they face a higher cost of borrowing, and that will reduce the level of loans that these financial institutions are making, and that essentially lowers the money supply in the economy.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we have a situation where prices are declining in the economy, so the opposite of inflation is deflation. So basically, instead of prices going up, they are rapidly falling, and
Mm-hmm.
again, that's not a good thing for the economy, right? So what central banks in modern economies do is they will lower the uh, the interest rate,
Mm-hmm.
and that will stimulate demand for loans. So people will go to the banks, and then they'll borrow more, and that increases the money supply. So people will be spending, demand will go up, and the price level will rise as well. So that's one thing that central banks in modern economies do
Yep.
to control inflation. Of
You
course,
think
the other channel is through we call it open market operations. So basically, it's a central bank buying or selling financial assets to financial institutions to
Yep.
increase or reduce money supply, right?
Sure. Sure.
Now,
Let's say it this way. And
now
thanks
to
to.
get back to your point,
Mhm.
it's so yes, there is there is the impact of inflation feeding into the value of our currency. But I also believe that it's the weakness of our monetary authority.
That is
That's
what I had wanted to capture. And dear viewers, what we are saying, because here we said we are educational forums, and so someone has someone is very appreciative of your statement here, Dr. Niala Atang Abdallah Al Jak, and she said very educative. She appreciated your explanation. So that's good. Look, what we want to say it here, and I just want to capture for our viewers, and just in case someone is going to listen, we know, and what you are saying, and I think that is what we're going to conclude. First thing, one of the levers to manage the economy is to have a monetary policy and to have the financial market. And you see the borrowing. So monetary policy is critical for the management of the control of turning on and off kind of the tap of the money flow, the money market, the supply of money in the market, which dictate whether you are in inflation or in deflation, as you say. But now, in this sense, I don't know, it could be there. But South Sudan does not have the financial market, the local banks. So that means that particular lever is not there, right? So if that one is not there, what else is there for the central bank? Is it something you can?
Well,
What other option would they have? They don't have the monetary market. Let's say
there.
financial market. It's not there.
The second, the open market operations might not work given the level of our financial sophistication, if I can put it. Like our banks are not that sophisticated, so we might not have a broader set of financial securities that the central bank could buy or sell to the commercial banks. But I believe the first lever, which is basically changing the interest rate, could work. Now the problem, or I know why it might not work in practice. It's and it has to do with financial inclusion. So basically, that is how many people in the country have access to banks.
Yes,
Probably
good question.
not a lot.
And,
A very small
and where do they borrow
subset
their
of
money
the
from? Because
population.
we see Amarat and all the tall
Exactly.
building, the high rise and construction. Where is the money?
Exactly. So my assumption is that the monetary policy could, in theory, set these interest rates optimally, but then the transmission mechanism from the central banks to the financial institutions or to the commercial banks, and ultimately to the to the average South Sudanese, does not. So things break down when you want to transmit the monetary policy from the commercial banks to the people, because a lot of our people do not have bank accounts.
Yes.
Or they do not bank at all. So they don't borrow and they don't save at the banks. So that means if you set a monetary policy, it's essentially null and void because it's not going to be transmitted to the people.
Yep.
So that's where things break down. And it's not something that we can change overnight. It's a gradual process. So we need to create another policy or to design a policy that encourages people to to have access to the banks.
Okay. Dear viewers and listeners, this is Dr. Nyal Kunchol. He's a Canadian-based economist, has PhD in economics, and is practicing economist. I am Jack Duanya Jack. I host Kayamba FM every Saturday, and we are the members of FPD Institute, Forum for Peace and Development. Our aim is to be educational. We look at the trending topics. We look at the current events, which are of significance that may impact or disrupt public life, individual life, societies. And we get that information, we synthesize it, we digest it, and break it down into a way you can understand. Last week, we started on the topic of economics with Dr. Niall. Personally, I'm more into natural resources, and I've done quite a lot of mineral economics and also had some management experience in that sense. So now, the reason we look at this is that we believe, as you have seen on the topic, that economic hardship has always led to economic revolution. They cause political instability in nations. That's why is critical. So as I continue with Dr. Nial, if you have a question, please don't shy away. Just ask. Ask in any language. And by the way, from the 1st of September, hopefully, we'll have a Dinka and Juba Arabic program on Kayamba FM. So, Dr. Nial, let's continue with the discussion. Now,
Yes.
the question is, you have mentioned that, the labor with the central bank. We know we don't have the financial market for here, for innocent. Here in Australia, and the same in Canada, these economies are comparable in a way. The size may be different. Canadian economy may be much larger compared to Australian economy. So, but the way it functions is comparable in a sense that here we have a very robust, complex financial market. Whenever the central bank move, all the commercial bank will move. It affects people with mortgages. So you see, you will have to choose. You have to spend more money in the market or you put it toward your mortgage. So the money is flowing back to the central banks. And when the interest rate goes up, then prices start falling. Then we start getting into that benchmark of deflation, as you mentioned, to avoid deflationary pressures. Then the bank lower the interest again. So they play with that lever. Another lever, which is always major, is the labor market as a measure of the economy anyway. But now in South Sudan, I do believe personally, well, this is my personal opinions, and is as Neil said before, it's not opinion of Duvico, it's my opinion as a Jack. It's not opinion of FED Institute. In my subjective judgment, objective judgment based on things that I've looked at, I believe it was not a great idea in the first place to plot the South Sudanese currency. Because why? We don't exchange it with anybody. As an economist, but you don't have to you don't have to get into it if you don't want to. But I believe it was a bad idea. Canada, in 1970s, after they experienced some difficulties, they fixed their currency. Chinese have fixed their currency. Yuan has been fixed for a while. They sometimes look as if it's float, but it's not a floating currency. Now, if I were to recommend something, fix that currency until a financial market, a free financial market is well developed. Do you think it's a good idea? If you were to advise as an economist.
I mean, exactly. That's what I was going to get into.
Beautiful. Get into it and elaborate. Anyway, give us more knowledge.
There are two ways in which, or there are two exchange rate regimes, and one of them is fixed exchange rate regime that you've mentioned. So basically, that the way that works is a country decides to fix the value of its currency against a basket of other currencies. So usually the U.S. dollar, the euro, the Chinese yuan, or the Japanese yen. Basically, fix it against major currencies. And then the other regime is the floating exchange rate regime, which essentially leaves the value of a country's currency to the forces of demand and supply. Right now, what we are, the problem that we are experiencing in South Sudan is at some point we had a floating exchange rate regime, and it didn't work quite well because the demand side of things was not functioning well. So nobody was demanding South Sudanese pound beyond our borders, right? And the floating exchange rate, basically there is some balance, or there's some equilibrium. So people demand your currency, and then the country supplies the currency, and the value will be determined by the strength of those forces.
Yep.
So if a lot of people are demanding your currency, a lot of countries are demanding your currency, then the value of your currency will go up. And if nobody is demanding it, then the value will fall. So the demand side was not there. Nobody was demanding it. And that's why we've been having this, rapid increase in,
Mm.
a rapid decline in the value of the South Sudanese pound. Now, the other thing that could work is to fix our exchange rate.
Yep.
So, and when we've done it before, and in my opinion, it worked quite well. But there are, fixing your currency requires a lot of discipline, if I can put it that way. First, it requires the political will. So
Yep.
you have to be, politically willing to keep that regime going. And then the other side of it is the monetary side as well, because
Mm-hmm.
you are essentially supporting your currency. So basically, if you have a fixed exchange rate system, you are saying as a country that no matter what, so whether the US dollar appreciates, we
Mm-hmm.
will keep the value fixed.
Yep.
So it might require you to resort to extraordinary, measures to keep it at that level. And this is, I believe, this is where we have failed as a country, because at some point it was working okay, but then the civil war started, and government priorities changed sort of, and we did not have enough resources to back up, or to keep the rate at the level that it was fixed at.
Good, correct. And that is has been, and this is a problem. I've had kind of a discussion with a number of economists, or, well, those who are not practicing per se. And most majority of the non-practicing economists, I will not call them economists, because if I'm not here to diminish, but some of them has some level of understanding of economics. And most of them supported the idea of floating the currency. And personally, I had been in some kind of a heated debate, where I said it was the wrong idea, it was the wrong advice, or even though the idea was good, I don't think the time was not mature for it. Sometimes you may do things in a time that is not for it. I believe, first, the currency was not floated when the economy was functioning, just before 2013 war. And then after the war, when the economy was declining, the currency was flooded. And to me, I think it was a wrong monetary policy, because they didn't have the levers to control it. Here, Australian government, normally, the central bank, when they see the value of the currency is falling, sometimes they buy back the Aussie currency. And I think it does happen. Now, the economy does not have that levers, in a sense that you cannot control deflation and inflation, or at least they can control deflation in a very bad way, printing, which is a bad way. Okay, but now it is plotted. If it is fixed, I think, I still believe there's still time. There's still an opportunity to fix it, to bring a bit of, to stabilize it a bit. I don't know how much effect it may have. Is it something? Do you think? And how long does it normally take? Yeah.
I think
John, come into this. Yeah.
one remedy that we could come up with is to have something in between,
Okay.
right? So it's not purely floating, and it's not purely fixed. So the economists call it managed floating, or exchange rate regime. And
The
the way
Chinese way, is it? Like Chinese are
exactly,
not really fixed, but
exactly.
you can
So
still exchange
the
their
way it
currency.
works is, you have you can have it fixed, or you can have it floating,
Mm-hmm.
But then every time there are economic shocks, then,
Yep.
as a country or as a government, you stand by and you intervene, and either you lower it, or you increase the value of your currency.
Mm,
That I think could be a remedy to the problem that we are having.
mm,
And getting back to what I was saying earlier, that it requires a lot of discipline to stabilize your exchange rate.
mm,
If you go to any modern economy, it doesn't really matter where you exchange your currency. So you can go to Bank A
mm-hmm,
in Australia, or go to Bank B. The value of choosing one bank over the other to do your currency exchange doesn't really matter that much.
mm-hmm.
Now, the problem that we were having in our country is a situation where people were essentially taking advantage of the interest rate, right?
Yep.
So you have a given amount of or if you walk into a commercial bank, the exchange rate would be different
Mm-hmm,
from what you would uh, get. Let's say if you walk into a local exchange rate dealership, and that was going on for a while. So basically it led to two, like we call it parallel exchange rates. So there was a different rate if you go to a dealership, in the
mm.
streets of Juba, and if you walk into a bank, there was a different exchange rate. And for a while, that was causing a lot of issues, because people will go and get the dollar
Mm-hmm.
at a lower, they use less pounds to get dollars, but then they come to the black market and exchange it,
So there
and
were
get
this
and,
the black market and
get it
actual, not the
correct.
black market, but it is the dealer that are promoting the black market and distorting the market.
I wouldn't think it was the dealers that were. I don't think the dealers were the ones causing the
Mm-hmm.
problem. It was an issue with the monetary policy, because they had the powers to equate these two rates. You could set the official exchange rate at what is in the black market, like what we had. For the last, well, right now things are a bit different, but I think from last year,
Mm-hmm.
it didn't really matter if you walk into a commercial bank, or walk into a dealership. It
But
was all
this is
the
how it
same.
works. Sorry to interrupt you, but this is how it works. Because I've been I've been in Juba last year or so, but in 2016, this is how it works. The people setting the rate in the central bank will release the hard currency, sending to commercial bank, and then the bank will be doing the hoarding. They hold back the hard currency, the dollar,
Yeah,
and so people who are going on the official rate, they are not given enough, and then the much of the dollar is smuggled into the black market.
to the black market. Yep.
So that is the middleman then having the
Yes.
problem. So it's a regulatory issue, is it, or
It's
is
a
it?
it is a regulatory issue,
Mhm.
but then it's also a laxity on the part of the monetary authority, right? Because the easiest way to fix that is to essentially merge the two rates, and then have what we were having, which is basically auctioning out the dollars,
Yep.
like we've been doing in the past, couple of years, let's say the last 1 year or 2 years, right?
Mhm.
So the central bank is making the dollar available, to the commercial banks. And
Yep.
then the expectation is that anyone that needs the US dollar will walk into a commercial bank and then basically get it at the same rate that they would at
In
a
the black
regular
market.
in the black market. And so basically, if you have that, then it eliminates basically the profit margins
Of
that
the middleman.
of the middleman or people in the black market. But I would not be surprised if prior to that there was some collusion, between
The black market.
elements in the black market and people on the other side of the coin.
And this is where it dangerous here. And that's where our topic befitted, dear listeners, because we try to link why it's so critical. Because one of the things that has been missing in the discussions among the South Sudanese is the economy. They discuss politics, they discuss everything, but one thing lead to another one. Yes, political instability can cause economic breakdown or disruption, slow growth in the economy. But also, failure to manage the economy can also cause political instability. So these two are we could say there are two faces of the same coin. They superpose each other. So that is what we have been discussing, dear listeners. And Dr. Niall is an economist and is practicing in Canada. And I'm someone who also try to follow the currencies a lot because it affects the mining business. So that much, it affected a lot. So now, we have been discussing the topic of inflations and deflations. Would we ever see deflation in the current South Sudan? I've not seen any deflation among South African. Is there anything, Dr.
It's
and tell to the common man what is deflation. They don't hear of it a lot. They hear of inflation.
It is a very rare. It is a very rare economic phenomenon. So deflation doesn't happen a lot in history, and if you look at if you look at the economic history, there are a few examples that you can cite as what we call typical deflation. So we don't. It's not a good thing in economics. So both of them are bad. So having inflation is not good. Having deflation is also not good. So the idea is to have a deterministic price level in the country, or a more stable price level. It might go up a little bit or go down a little bit, but have it stable. So in Canada and US, the one of the mandates of so we call it Bank of Canada in Canada, and in the US is
Federal Reserve,
the Federal Reserve Bank. So one of the key mandate is to keep inflation around 2%. So zero inflation is not desirable. Yep. And negative inflation, which is basically deflation, is not desirable either. But something around 2% is what we generally target.
Okay, so it's never a good thing. Okay, I think that has been great, Dr. Niall. I think we have given the public a lot, and we want to keep it within time. I know you had a few difficulties before getting on, but I've distributed this show on many platforms. So you have about 10 people listening to you now. Before they were like 15, and it goes up and down. So, and I know when we are talking about more scientific, the economy, they call it decimal science. Because it can go either way. But now it's more than anything because it's become more complex, that the world become more global. Now, with the tensions, we don't discuss politics. And with the tension, global events, should South Sudanese be worried from economic perspective? I mentioned before that whatever happened in Ukraine and how it affects our people, we are majority of the population is aid dependents. They depend on food aids, supply from the UN, many things. Every time the developed world is interrupted, the funding for the UN and the agencies is also reduced or cut in the case of wireless organization under the former president of the United States. So we have seen during the pandemics what has happened. Should they pay attention? Is it something economically? Should South Sudan, do you think South Sudan is ready for any shock in the international market? I know it sounds like an obvious question, but some of these people assume they know it, but not all the time. So I just want to ask.
I think we should be greatly concerned about the current unfoldings in the world, and notably the war in Ukraine. Of course, we are not isolated from the global markets. So thank you, brother Dengalier. So one of the issues that the current geopolitical tensions causing is the rapid rise in the prices of basic commodities.
Yep.
For example, wheat and energy products. So in South Sudan, although we produce crude oil, we do not have the ability to refine that crude oil.
Yep.
So we are also importing refined oil products. So the gasoline, the diesel, it's all imported. Now we do have, I think we have some subsidies in place to sort of, cushion people from the shocks that we've seen in the recent past. But I, in particular, I'm not a fan of subsidies, because subsidies are essentially a ticking bomb, right? So you refer to the problems in Tunisia and the Arab Spring and all of that, and how they were caused by the economic pressures. If you really narrow down those issues, then subsidies are number one. They are the number one culprit.
And
Because
particularly the Sudanese one, there's
exactly,
the
because
Al Bashir one.
subsidies are like relief food
Yep.
or relief items. So they promote over dependence,
Yep.
on free goods, basically. So you have the government, you know, shouldering the burden of increase in prices. So they put in the money, and then somehow the prices are lowered. Now, if you have the same government experiencing other problems in the country, then of course we have limited resources. So it's possible that the money that was used to support or to keep prices lower in terms of subsidies will be moved to to other pressing sectors. So the moment that happens, people start feeling the economic pressure even more. In Sudan, North Sudan, the
Yep.
government was subsidizing, oil and wheat. And for whatever reason, in the Arab countries, wheat flour is a big. It's like a political issue in its own. So governments try their best to ensure that wheat prices are as low as they can possibly be. Same thing with the energy prices. So when Sudan was having economic hardships, the government decided to withdraw, the subsidies that were placed on wheat imports and energy imports as well. So the
Yep.
result of that is energy prices went up dramatically.
Yep.
Prices for wheat or wheat price went up dramatically. So there was a shortage of bread, and people could not access gasoline for their vehicles. And those two things combine to create what we have right now in Sudan. Of course, there are other minor problems, but I think subsidies were the number one culprit. So, coming to the context of our country,
Yep.
I think we should stay away as much as we can
From
from
subsidies.
subsidies.
But
And if we must use subsidies, in my opinion, they should be targeted. So, the reason why we have subsidies is to ensure that the poorest of the poor can access basic commodities, right?
yes.
The problem in sub-Saharan Africa is the way subsidies are applied is you can call them retrogressive in the sense that a lot of people that benefit from the subsidies are not the poor. Take, for example,
True.
energy
I agree.
subsidies placed on
This is getting interesting.
energy products. Who buys?
Go
Who
on.
buys? Who drives vehicles in Africa? It's not
It
the
is the
poor.
rich that could afford, and they
It is
are
the
the rich
rich.
being
It
subsidized
is
with
the rich
with
that
fuel
drive.
subsidies.
Right. So if you spend billions of dollars every year to keep gasoline prices low, you're not benefiting the regular. You're not benefiting the common man. Walking on the streets. It is the rich guy that has the V8 or Prado or whatever they drive that is benefiting, right? So so basically what I'm trying to say is that if number one, we should stay away from subsidies. Number two, if we must have them, then we should find a way to target these subsidies so that people that need them the most are the
Get
ones
them.
that are benefiting. So in the
Great.
West here, we don't really have subsidies on. I know in Canada we don't have subsidies on energy, products. I remember when the war in Ukraine started, gasoline prices shot up. We were paying over $2 per liter here in Canada. The government did not intervene because they know it's a highly it's a politically contentious issue. The moment you place them there, you cannot withdraw them because once you withdraw them, you are at war with your citizens.
Yes, because this is the fairness test start kicking in, and you are right. I personally don't believe in them. Neither do I believe in this thing called fairness test, which because when people anchor themselves on it, they think it belongs to them. And but the idea, I've looked at them and I try to follow the bread revolutions in Sudan that led to the collapse of Bashir's government, and subsidies was one of them because they were experiencing economic hardship. The oil prices were dropping, were crashing, and therefore the fees being levied on the oil pipeline from South Sudan was not enough. So the government found itself in a hard corner. The government budget was squeezed when they lifted it. Now the idea is that when I look at the way most African countries design subsidies, particularly on petroleum products, it is that it will flow into the public through the public transport system. And particularly that's how Kenya has designed it, that all these public transport vehicles, the matatus, the lorries, the buses, that they will pass on to the consumer. But as you mentioned, it is the rich that could afford all these cars and these luxury buses. So you find that the subsidy has been given by the government, but the consumer does not feel it in his or in her pocket. It does not go to the consumer. In South Sudan, as you mentioned, I don't know whether there are so many things they subsidize per se, but I think there is kind of, during the fuel crisis when people were queuing in Juba, there was that agreement reached between the government and the suppliers of the fuel product. So in order to overcome that, don't get into it in the first place. That is what you are suggesting, which I think is the first, because we not reach the common man anyway. But then, as we speak, everything has shot up as we speak because of inflationary measures, pressures, and because the central bank lifted the rate. And because when it lifts in the central bank, it goes up. So there is nothing to caution the common man. So yeah, thanks, Dr. Niall. Dear viewers, we're talking about why South Sudan should also get ready. Whatever, we are become one village. It's called now the global village because of globalizations. Uncertainty, information just flows so fast and so quick in a thick volume. And if anything happens in one part of the world, you will not be spared. And that's why even a common man should be concerned. Last week I mentioned, and we always look at the papers, that South Sudan is facing a disaster in the next few months. In this particular financial year that started last month in June, it's not like we are alarmists, but we read the information. Majority, 4.5 million South Sudanese depend on the food aids, either in displaced camp or in refugee camp. The World Food Program has cut its budget for 1.7 million South Sudanese. Now, where would they go to? They have to fend for themselves. And this is where the question of economics is coming in. So, your last remark, Dr. Niall, and dear listeners, thanks for tuning in. Feel free to ask a question. The numbers are on the show. And you can write a comment. If you have a question for Dr. Niall or for me, we are more than happy to answer. We are discussing the economic, and we zoom into inflation, because that's what many South Sudanese understand. We understand it here in these countries as well, because inflation is a big thing. After all the stimulus packages, the government is trying to wind back raising interest rate. So anyone with a question, feel free to ask. Otherwise, Dr. Niall, is there any last remarks? It has been a fruitful discussion, and I'm more than happy that we will continue to have such discussion in the future. It is a big, sometimes we run in the series, we're discussing inflation today, and people can see you. They may not see you in moving pictures, which is in a movie, but they're seeing you. So,
Exactly.
so the moving pictures are not there, but the still picture is there. So, any last remark?
So as we wind down, Dr. Jack, I would like to point out that there is a very strong link between the way the economy performs and the political stability in that country. And we've discussed at great length the various channels through which the economy can feed into the political stability. So we've talked about inflation, we've talked about exchange rates. Of course, there are other mechanisms. So, for example, inequality, right? So if the wealth or the national cake of a country is not equally distributed amongst the citizen, then of course that's going to lead to some resentment and political instability. That's a big topic of its own, because we've had countries or governments that have collapsed because of high levels of inequality. And of course, there are other things. For example, the government debt or the level of sovereign debt that a poorly performing economy can cause. Now, I think the biggest question that we should ask ourselves is how do we remedy this problem, or how do we how do we mitigate the impact of economic hardships on the political stability of the country? So number one is to try everything possible to fix the economy,
Mm-hmm.
and that is a very hard thing to achieve in an economy like South Sudan. But the best way to start is to diversify the economy. Right now, we heavily rely on the oil sector, and there are
Mm.
other sectors that are largely ignored. So we could tap into those sectors, so that we don't depend on oil.
Or,
Of course, oil is an internationally traded commodity, so it's
mm-hmm.
going to bounce. The prices will bounce up and down, and we need to find a way to cushion ourselves
All
from
right.
these.
Dr. Niall, there is
Right.
a question that I think we have addressed. Deng earlier asked a question. What do you think the government of South Sudan can do to strengthen the dollar against the pound? And we mentioned before that one of the things is to manage the currency by either going back and fix it. It has done in economies like in Canada. But elaborate on that, Dr.
Exactly.
Niall.
Yeah. So by diversifying the economy, we would have a lot of commodities to export, and as we export more commodities to other countries, you know, other countries will demand our currency,
Mm-hmm.
and the value of our currency will increase. So that's one way that we can. That's the surest way.
To
Rather the
strengthen
idea.
the
That's the
pound
surest
against
way to
the.
strengthen our pound. So we need to diversify the economy so that we are not relying on oil as the only way to get hard currency or the US dollar. So we need to export agricultural products. We need to, export other, minerals. For example, I heard there is gold in the country, so we need to tap into that.
Yep, and unfortunately, yes, there is gold, but it's not reported in the government revenues. But anyway, that's a different discussion.
Yeah, and open up. We have a beautiful country. For example, we have waterfalls in the country. We have places that could become game parks or game reserves. So we need to open up those sectors so that we can get so we have more US dollar coming into the country and not have to spend our pound to get the US dollar. Then the second remedy to the problems that we have is to have a political will to strengthen the institutions that we have in the country. So
Mm-hmm.
we've talked about the monetary authority. Of course, the other side that is very important is the fiscal side, the fiscal authority, which is
Yep.
basically the parliament. So the parliament
Mm-hmm.
is the entity of the government that decides how the money will be spent. So that institution can be strengthened,
Mm-hmm.
and there are other institutions that we can mention. The security institutions also need to be strengthened
Mm-hmm.
so that people can go about engaging in productive activities,
Mm.
and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time elaborating on those, but Dr. Jack, I would like to say that it was a great pleasure to be on the show, and hopefully that helps in one way or another. And I would be happy to talk to you in the near future.
Yep, absolutely. This is FED Institute would try to have it regular speakers. And not only will we speak on the topic of economic all the time, but we will be speaking on other things. But we start saying in a series. We have been talking about the water management, water resources management. And what you mentioned that I highlight, it may reach a point where we may be having a panel with many others, which was my wish. But we'll open this one up to many of our people to contribute as well. As I said before, we'll launch in other languages in the near future. Look, I'm interested in this topic of the economic because it impacts people's life, and it is something very crucial. And what you said, what we said here, it's up to the policymakers to listen, and if they reach out, we can prepare things in a written form. Nothing stopping us writing. It's one of our aim to write a policy brief. So, Brother Dengs, you asked a question and has been answered. First thing first, diversify the economy, and that will one way our pound will be in demand. Nothing also is stopping the government to do take regulatory measures, as Dr. Nyala said. Regulation matters a lot. What is distorting now the black market, which appear to be like the true market in a sense. There's nothing stopping the government regulating and matching it in order to cut out the margin, as Dr. Nyal mentioned in his discussion. And finally, stability will be one of those things where peace and stability is important for people to engage in productive activities. So thanks for the question, and thank Dr. Nyal. I think we have just passed 1 hour, 1.5 hour mark, and we thought it was going to be short. But look, we will continue to discuss in this series. Take note of what you mentioned. Inequality is one of the major things facing the Sub-Saharan Africa. And I think we'll approach it from that aspect. The Sub-Saharan Africa is being affected. So we'll approach it generically without narrowing to anybody. But it's one of those things that I would want us to discuss. What are the impact? And why should people who accumulate things primitively should be a little bit more cautious and act consciously? Because you are in Canada, I'm in Australia. If you go in front of my house, there's no big gate, no big fence. Because the same street, you have a wealthy man next door, another guy, but at least inequality is always there, but the gap is narrow compared to the Sub-Saharan Africa. So I think it's something I would want you and plus a couple of our social scientists and community development experts to be on the panel with you, and we may tackle it together. So yeah, I think it's a very easy topic of its own.
Yes.
And our brothers back in South Sudan may join our panels at some stage if the internet would allow them. So thank you, Dr. Nyal, and thanks, brothers, for listening to Kayamba FM. Now, let's look at what is happening in South Sudan, the media. So feel free, you can either drop off or you can, if you can.
Yeah, I'll drop off. It's almost 12:30 midnight here.
Oh, okay.
So I'll drop off and I'll catch up with you maybe when I wake up. I'll listen to the rest of the video.
Yep, I will. Yep, I would appreciate. We'll discuss. We'll definitely catch up and go further. But I would want to bring South Sudan in the media for our listeners and our friends. So it's something that we normally do regularly. Now, we look at South Sudan of what is happening in the media, and how is our country being reflected and reported. And by the way, we didn't mention, but we know what is happening here. Sorry, folks. This is what we need to see. South Sudan in the media. Now, I know people are focusing on the Kenyan elections, and there is a lot of things going on. But let's see what is happening. There is this Wenya Gabriel, a LA Lakers player, on how basketball could unite South Sudan. So, look, our boys are doing very well on the basketball court. And this was on BBC yesterday. This Wenya, he's called Wenya Gabriel. He's a South Sudanese. And he played for Los Angeles Lakers, and he is one of those players who is among the tier one clubs in the United States. So I agree, looking at what Luoldeng has done with our boys in the basketball court, and our youth is performing well internationally across the globe, whether they are in diaspora in Canada, US, Australia. We have seen our runners, our basketball players doing amazing thing in the field, earning gold for their host countries, for their new homes. But it makes South Sudan proud. The world hunger is not an inevitably. Oh, they said the world hunger is not an inevitability. It is politics. True. Yes, inequality, as I just mentioned before with Dr. Niall, inequality is a major issue, and it's one thing that need to be tackled. But at the same time, countries need to protect themselves. It said the head of UN mission to South Sudan condemn extrajudicial execution. Many of you have seen graphic pictures for the last 1 week. We believe that the court of the court and the justice system have the capacity to try and judge an individual that is found to have done the wrong things. We stand with the well in condemning the extrajudicial killing at Mayom County. It is something that should have not happened. If anyone has done anything wrong, no one should take the law into their own hand to decide the fate of another one. Therefore, people who take such decisions bring shame to the whole of South Sudan and to Africa. So, extrajudicial killings should not have a room in a country that aspires to be democratic, to be under the rule of law, under the one government, under one presidency. No death or execution in South Sudan can just happen unless someone is sentenced by the court and sentenced to death. Therefore, our condolences to the families, the grieving families, and we condemn such activities. It's inhumane, it's wrong. The pictures are too graphic and will not show them. That any act should not be promoted. We know our country is going through difficulties. There is war, instabilities. Communities are fighting. Rebels groups everywhere. But too wrong does not make it right. If one's group was wrong to commit heinous act, there is no room for the government of the people. People who act are the dependents of the people. To taint the name, to damage the image of the government, to damage the image of the people of South Sudan, to paint a bad picture about South Sudanese, a bad picture about the South Sudanese government, and a bad picture about all of us as Africans. It shouldn't happen. And it is our hope the government of South Sudan under His Excellency President Salva Kiir Mayardit will hold those guys who commit that heinous act accountable. So I just wanted to register that. That was so bad. And will not show any picture that's so graphic. Now let's get back to the news. Now, there you go. You can see there. The Murle of South Sudan killed 2 people, kidnapped 2 children in Gambela. This is, so the Gambela has been under attack and is alleged that the Murle community, Murle raiders, actually. They call them the Murule militia of the community. The Murule militias killed 2 people, kidnapped 2 children. This is reported by All Africa. Tragic irony of hunger death in Karamojong, Uganda, amid plenty of climate adaptations. Now, Uganda and South Sudan army signed pact on fighting the rebels. Now, we are the home of all the news. We get the news. We have the machine learning algorithms, artificial intelligence, go over the internet. So if you need all the news, just go to FPD Institute page, go to peaceforum.press and go to the news, and you'll find all the news there. We have set up artificial intelligence. It roam all over the internet and find anything being said about South Sudan, and it pull it in to our website. So we have done the hard yard for you. If you need the news, go to peaceforum.press, and you'll see the sign of FPD Institute. If you go there and you see that page, that logo, FPD Institute, that is our website for FPD Institute. Go to the news. What we have done the hard work. You don't have to Google everything to find the news. Go to FPD Institute, which is peaceforum.press. Go to the news. We have collated all the news. We have written a long line of codes, and it roam over the internet. It is scrap the internet. If it find anything about South Sudan, it will pull it over to us. So you don't have to do the hard work. We have done the hard work already. So these are all the news. So it says U.S. demand release of BOA journalists detained in South Sudan. This has been trending on the news, and it goes back until the 8th of August, which was reported by Ghana Wave. So these news we pull them everywhere. This is reported in Ghana. The dismissal or the firing of the presidential press secretary, Atanya Wakatany, it was also reported in Ghana. You can see here. The news cover the whole world. We pull it in. So if anybody is talking about South Sudan anywhere, we'll get it. We'll get it. So South Sudan, 5 southern African countries, kick start elephant census. I think it's a great thing by our government. Counting to know all the elephants in our game reserves, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing. So well done to the Ministry of Wildlife. And then the Kenyan elections. This one was the Interpress Service. Yep. And then there was also dragging Russia into the Myanmar conflicts. So go to the website and find all the news. If you need anything, we have already done it. So all the news that you need, you don't have to, we pull it together under the news. Thank you for tuning in and for listening today. We have been talking on the topic of economics. Why is it important? The government should manage the economy. Just to give you the summary, for those who came lately, we have indicated that we mentioned to you that any mismanagement in economy has always led to revolutions. In Tunisia, the crisis that caused the Arab world were economic crisis that led to the country being unable to sustain its youth. Unemployment went up. All the graduates and the youth who were going through institution of learning end up jobless on the street of Tunis. And one young man who was mishandled by the police set himself alight. And that is how that economic hardship led to the Arab revolution starting in Tunisia. We have also seen how it went. It started as a small group and it escalated into a big group. In Sudan, the government of al-Bashir was toppled by a bread movement when the prices of the basic commodities like bread went up. The public could not afford. Families could not afford to put a food on the table. They could not feed themselves. It started as a little demonstration. It grew and grew and grew and grew. And after it grew into a stage where it cannot be managed, the government collapsed. In Sri Lanka, if one family, the family of Rajapaksa's, the brothers, have been governing the country. And as they were governing the country, they ran down the economy. The kleptocracy failed to see what was coming. They get detached from the public. They could not link the suffering of the common man with the economy because they were not feeling it. They were living in their own world while the ordinary men were suffering. And in June this year, the country ran out of money. They did not have any money. They could not afford to bring in the fuel that light the country because petroleum is used for electricity generation in Sri Lanka. The street of Colombo were occupied by hungry demonstrators. And by July, the 20th of July, a new president was installed. What caused it? It is the economics hardship. That's what we have been talking. We have been talking about this, why we want to help our government. Economic management is critical and essential for the growth of a country. And with a poor management of economy, then it becomes a security threat to the existence of the nation. It leads to chaos and anarchy. And as it happened, then opportunities find themselves in. Looting will occur, riot occur, law and order will break down. And when the central government cannot control law and order, then its power diminish and it disappear. And that's what happened in Sri Lanka. It happened in Sudan. It happened in Tunisia. And it happened across the world. Government have been toppled by the hungry populations. Hunger is more sharper than the bullets. Why? Because people would always choose to confront the authorities when they are hungry. It is a serious issue that the policymakers have to pay attention. And as people who are here at Kayamba FM, we are a group of professionals who understand things outside the government operating parameters. Because we are researchers, we get information, we synthesize it. Now, it is our role to do our patriotic duty. To us, it is a patriotic duty to highlight the issues. Managing the economy is critical for the continuity and for the existence of the nations. Economic management is critical. Economy and political stability are very critical because they one feed into each other. When there is a political instability, the economic growth suffer. And when the economic growth suffer, then it reinforces and fuel more instability. So the country went into a loop. Bad economy, instability in politics, and instability in politics lead to deterioration of the economy. And the more the economy deteriorates, the more the country becomes very unstable, and chaos will occur. And when the chaos occur, the judicial system, law and order, and the social public of the country break down. And that's how kingdoms collapse. That's how monarchies have been toppled. That is how government have collapsed. And we have seen with al-Bashir. We have seen in Tunisia, which led to the whole of Arab revolution. We have seen in Sri Lanka, and we have seen it lately in some part of Africa. Now, what is the role of our authorities? Our authorities should focus in managing the economy, not threatening the civil populations. And a threat to civil population would always create a resistance. The role of the authorities is to provide service delivery. Focus on the service delivery. And when people are given the services they require, they will not have frictions with the authorities. Because when the authorities try to push things in a bad economy, it causes friction. Friction causes conflict. That is what normally occurs. So avoid anything that will result in resistance. Manage the economy. We are encouraging. And it is this thing is applicable everywhere. It's not narrowing to one country. It is applicable in sub-Saharan Africa. And any Africans who are the ear and the ability to analyze and synthesize the information must sit back. Sri Lanka is not the only country. There are so many countries in the queue of Sri Lanka. There are so many countries in the queue of Sri Lanka. In the same state like Sri Lanka. There are so many countries in the same status, in the same economic dire situation like Sri Lanka. Those countries are tinkering at the edge of a government collapse. A government can run out of money. It happened in Sri Lanka. It happened in Argentina. Why? Because when people ignore the economic management, and how do you manage the economic? It starts with the people. Get human resource, people with the ability, not opportunities. Get genuine citizens who understand the game, and citizens will be more than happy to help their government. Now, we have been talking the role of expert. I and Dr. Nyal were talking. Nyal is an economist, and I'm also an expert in mineral economics. Why do we talk about it? Because we want to bring the role of expert. Everyone wink it. The problem of Africa, and it's now what in South Sudan, everyone will show up and they say they are expert in anything. We have seen that happening in the last recent event in South Sudan. And everywhere. Please, expertise is acquired through experience, not through mere studies. You go and study it, you do it, you experience it, and now you can say you're an expert in that. That is how expertise comes. Let's get people into the system to help our country's people who know what it is. If someone has not done it, don't call him an expert or her. What is their expertise? An expert is someone who has studied that, they have done it, and that's why we call them professional. Get professional to do things for us to help our country. How do you say someone is a professional when they have not professed the knowledge? And that is where the word professor comes from. In academia, knowledge is professed through scientific journals. You write scientific articles, and after considerable amounts of work and teaching, now you have professed your knowledge to the world, and the University Council will give you a professorship. Not like in South Sudan, where everyone is called a professor. Not everyone who's PhD is a professor. No, they are not. They are mere PhD graduates. They have not professed their knowledge. They have not shown us what have they done to deserve professorship. Professorship is achieved through a scientific publication, a scientific journal. That's how professorship is given, not books. It's through scientific professorship. Let go through scientific journal and let people prove they have professed their knowledge. And now we can say they're professors. Now, or through their teaching, some people have taught for many years. They have experience at universities. They deserve to be given professorship by university council. That is professorship. Now, professional. Experts are professional who have studied and they have worked and they have done it. Or not necessarily studies anyway. Someone who have done something for many years, they acquire experience, they become expert in that area. We can say they're professional, they're expert. How do you say someone is an expert when they have not studied and they have not professed that knowledge? How come he's a professional? Now, I want to bring, because this topic, FPD Institute, our show is always called Know Your Expert. Not everyone will parade themselves as an expert. A university graduate is not an expert until they have gone to the field and they have done it. And they could say, we have done year and year and year. Here are the projects. Here, this is where I have worked. That is what an expert is. If we want to help South Sudan, we have to be very clear. Not every Tom and Jerry that turn up in the street is an expert. No. Let them demonstrate they know the field. And that is why our discussion is always clouded. Our discussion is always mixed up. People want to deny the truth. Not everyone is an expert. Here in Australia, and in US and in Canada, you cannot just say that I'm an expert. You have to demonstrate you know it. Ask yourself, if you are an expert in the countries where you study, what makes you think you are going to be an expert in your own country? So we want to elevate people to become experts. And that's why the FPD Institute will not shy away from speaking to this. Thank you, Brother Cage in Chamoth. We were talking with Dr. Nyal Kunchol, and Dr. Nyal and I were discussing the economics. So for those who just came, we discussed the topic of economics, but I was just mentioning a few things. Our show is always about our expert, but it's not people outside. FPD Institute has a representative in South Sudan. It is only the time zone difference and the internet that has been limiting. But we are moving very soon. Most of our followers in Sudan would start joining the show on the FPD Institute. And Kayamba FM is live every Saturday. I know it's too early now in South Sudan. It's about 7 a.m. So we'll see how to adjust our time. And thanks for listening, and thanks for being part of the show. But don't forget, all the news, we have done the hard work. We have done the hard work. We have collated the information. We have done the machine learning algorithm. We wrote it. So anything about South Sudan, don't Google. Go there, you'll find it. Have a great weekend, friends. Have a great week, followers. And follow us on our page. Join the FPD Institute community. And we'll roll out our online community officially, which is not Facebook. We'll move away from Facebook very soon, because we'll be streaming on YouTube. Facebook is very unstable. Sometimes it will just freeze our videos and will hide them from the public. So YouTube is more stable and that's why you see most of the established channels stream on Facebook. We'll always show clips on YouTube, sorry. We'll always show a clip on Facebook, but mostly we'll move to YouTube. So thanks for tuning in, and have a good weekend. Tune in all the time. Kayamba FM could be found on Zeno FM/Kayamba. We are simulcasting 24/7. We are educational channel. We don't involve in politics. We are not politicals. We are non-partisans. So we bring knowledge to you as we did today. Have a good weekend and may God bless you. May God bless South Sudan. Thank you all. This is Kayamba FM and I am Jack Dwanya Jack. Have a good day. Bye.